There are only two things Mira really hates: vomit in zero gravity, and being beaten half to death in front of a crowd that claps. Today, she's dealing with both. The first punch cracked her nose. The second sent her skidding across the marble floor of the gilt spire's central plaza, her mop flying into a nearby fountain that gurgled with water imported from a ruined Earth. Around her, the galaxies rich and grotesque raised their glasses. One drunken blue aristocrat even cheered, spilling neon liquor onto the floor she just spent 45 minutes polishing. Mira staggered to her feet. She wasn't a fighter, not really. Not anymore. She wasn't a rebel, or a soldier, or a war bride. She was a janitor. A damn good one, too. Knew where to find coffee stains on invisible surfaces, and how to clean up alien slime without triggering the acid reflex. She had a pension plan, dental, and a kid who thought she was just another tired mom with a tired job. But today, none of that mattered. Trenx, the ringleader of the so-called Thon, loomed over her, 12 feet of scales, tusks, and smug entitlement. He wasn't just any slaver. He was entertainment here. A known personality, with a laugh like grinding meat and a fanbase that thought torture was a good Thursday night. He cracked his knuckles and grinned, all teeth and cruelty. "Come on, human," he sneered. "Give us a little scream. It's the best part." Mira didn't scream. Instead, she spit a wad of blood and sarcasm onto his clawed foot. "Sorry," she croaked, swaying on her feet. "That the best part, or was it your face?" He hit her again, this time so hard her head bounced off the fountain rim. The world went sideways. Somewhere distant, she heard someone laughing. Someone else betting on how long she'd last. The gilt spire wasn't a workplace. It was a meat grinder for souls, wrapped in velvet and gold. And right now, it had decided she was the main course. In the moment between consciousness and blackout, Mira reached into her utility belt. Not for a weapon. Just a button. A small, unnoticed dead switch, patched into a relic of a comm system older than this whole station. She pressed it with her thumb, blood smearing the surface. One ping. One signal. It was all she needed. 2 light years away, in the cold silence of a forgotten moon, Griff Malric opened his eyes. The birdsong stopped. The forest went still. He rose slowly from a battered wooden chair outside a cabin made from crash freighter scrap. He didn't check the message. He didn't have to. He'd built the signal system himself, during a long winter where he and Mira had nothing but firewood, love, and secrets. Behind him, their son Lex ran outside, cradling a data slate with math homework and a half-eaten protein bar. "Dad? What's wrong?" Griff stared at the horizon. When he spoke, it was low and final. "Mom pressed the button." Lex's face fell. He didn't ask why. He just looked at his father the way Mira once had, half in fear, half in awe. Griff turned and headed inside. He opened a long locked case beneath the floorboards, pulled out armor that hummed with memories, and weapons that still smelled of the last war. His hands moved with grim efficiency, muscle memory firing like he'd never left. Lex followed him to the door. "You're going, aren't you?" Griff didn't answer immediately. He slung a plasma rifle over one shoulder, then crouched to meet his son's eyes. "If I'm not back in a week," he said, "burn the cabin." Lex nodded once. Not a tear in sight. He was Myra's boy through and through. Back in the gilt spire, Mira was no longer conscious. The guards dragged her limp body toward the entertainment pits, past shimmering curtains and giggling drunkards. She didn't wake when they stripped her of her uniform, or when they branded her with a numbered tag. They tossed her in with the rest of the entertainment stock. But even bruised and broken, she was different. She still had fire behind her swollen eyelids. Even unconscious, Mira looked like someone who'd punched life right in the teeth and would probably do it again once she stood up. Above the pit, Trenx toasted to his fans. "Let it be known! No one insults the House of Chains and walks away. This is a lesson for all the vermin out there who forget their place." The crowd roared in approval. Elsewhere in the spire, security feeds began to glitch. Lights dimmed for no reason. A crate of pastries in the loading dock exploded in pink frosting and thermite, killing 2 guards and launching an anti-surveillance virus into the system. 3 levels below, a man in scavenge armor moved through corridors with terrifying silence. He didn't speak. He didn't hesitate. He didn't leave survivors. The former Juggernaut had returned. And he was pissed. Griff didn't need to ask who had hurt his wife. He was going to find them, all of them. And when he did, he wasn't just going to end their lives, he was going to end their legacy. Their fear-based empire. Their reality TV violence. The illusion that they could do whatever they wanted to whoever they wanted. He moved like smoke. Like inevitability. Back on the surface of the moon, Lex sat on the porch of the cabin, clutching a photo of his mom and dad together in better days. A breeze lifted the edge of the image, but he held it steady. He didn't cry either. In the spire, Trenx returned to his suite, laughing at the highlight reel of the beating. But the screen flickered once, then cut to black. A single message appeared. "Coming for what's mine." He frowned, confused. Then a guard burst through the door. "Sir? We have an intruder. High level. Took out Beta Squad. Left a message carved into the floor." "What message?" Trenx growled. The guard swallowed hard. "You hurt my janitor." The wind howled outside the cabin, carrying with it the scent of snow and iron. Griff stood in front of the cracked mirror, fastening the last strap of his chest plate. It still fit barely. His shoulders had grown wider with time, and the scars across his torso, souvenirs from too many near-deaths, peeked out from under the edges of the worn armor. The Juggernaut insignia had long since faded, but he knew where it had been. He remembered the weight of it, the responsibility, the blood. He promised himself he'd never put this suit on again. And yet, here he was. Not for duty. Not for politics. For Mira. The ship was buried under 2 meters of ice, cloaked and sealed, left untouched for almost a decade. It took him 2 hours to dig it out with a plasma shovel and another 30 minutes to reboot the flight systems. The engines groaned like an old man with arthritis, but when they lit up the sky in a blaze of blue fire, Griff felt something stir inside him. Something dangerous. Something that had been sleeping far too long. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was a storm coming home. As the ship climbed into the upper atmosphere, Lex's voice crackled through the comm unit. The kid had wired himself into the NAV console, while Griff had been prepping weapons. "Dad, I uploaded the last known coordinates of Mom's ID tag. It's inside the Guild Spire, lower entertainment deck. If they moved her, it hasn't updated yet." Griff kept his eyes on the stars. "You did good, kid. Stay smart. Stay safe." Lex hesitated for a moment. "Bring her back." The silence that followed was heavy, but Griff filled it with one word. The kind of word that didn't promise, didn't ask, it warned. "Always." A day later, in orbit above the glittering monstrosity of the Guild Spire, Griff sat in the pilot seat dressed like a smuggler who'd stolen from the wrong people. Gone was the Juggernaut armor. He wore a patched jacket with fake whiskey logos, carried a crate full of rare earth alcohol that didn't exist, and had a grin on his face that said he was dumb, drunk, and very rich. The docking guards scanned him, barely interested, too busy arguing about their lunch order to notice the cold calculation behind his eyes. "I'm here to make some friends and sell some booze," Griff drawled, slapping the side of the crate. "Heard this place appreciates a man who knows his liquor." They let him through. The Guild Spire hadn't changed. It was still a temple of excess, where aliens in silk robes and plated gold skins walked past starving humans dressed as pets. Slavery was forbidden in the central systems, but here, in this sovereign pocket of space bought with bribes and blood, rules were things to be ignored until inconvenient. Griff kept his head down. He didn't need attention yet. Not until he knew where Mira was and who was standing between them. He visited bars, slipped credits to janitors and waiters, asked the right questions with the right amount of drunken swagger. People talked. They always did. It took him 2 hours to confirm that Mira had been put in the pit. The private entertainment ring beneath the central hub, where high-value slaves were kept as status symbols. The kind of place where someone like Trenx could parade his power in front of a crowd and break someone's spirit with a smile. Griff left behind a trail of bodies no one saw. Quiet kills. Silent interrogations. One security chief found in his bathtub, throat opened, his access card missing. Another found floating in the recycling system, his communicator still flashing with Griff's final message. "Where's the janitor?" By the time Griff reached the entrance to the pit, he knew everything. He knew Trenx's schedule, his guard shift rotations, and the fact that the spire had recently received a shipment of experimental narcotics disguised as spice, drugs meant to pacify entertainment slaves. He also knew that if they had given even a drop to Mira, someone was going to die in a way history books wouldn't bother to explain. To get inside, he needed a diversion. That's where the crate of pastries came in. Cass, his old friend and ex-arms dealer, had baked them herself. Or at least programmed the autobaker to do it. Explosives wrapped in frosting. The crate had been rigged with a remote trigger and delivered to the lower docks with a forged invoice signed by Trenx himself. When the crate exploded, it wasn't the bang that killed, it was the data virus it released into the spire's surveillance systems. Every camera on levels 6 through 9 blinked out for 10 minutes. Enough time for Griff to slip into the pit and remind everyone why he was once considered a one-man extinction event. He moved through the dark like a wolf through tall grass, eyes scanning for her. The other prisoners shrank back from him, more afraid of this sudden ghost in their midst than their usual tormentors. He didn't blame them. He hadn't come looking like a savior. He'd come looking like vengeance with a sidearm. And then he saw her. Mira was lying in a cell, bare concrete, no bed, bruises down her arms, lips split, one eye swollen shut. But even unconscious, her hands were clenched. Still fighting. Still Mira. Griff reached for the door, but it was biolocked. Fine. He planted a microcharge and stepped back. The explosion was small, surgical. The door creaked open, and the woman inside stirred. He stepped in, knelt beside her. Her eye fluttered open, swollen but alert. Even now, she found enough strength to speak. "You took your damn time." He exhaled something between a laugh and a sob. "You pressed the button," he said softly. "You never pressed the button." She coughed. "Blood. Laughed anyway. Guess I finally needed a mop." Griff reached beneath her, careful, lifting her with a tenderness the armor didn't show. She winced, but wrapped her arm around his neck. "I'm getting you out of here," he said. She nodded. "Just kill Trenx on the way." He looked at her. Looked at the broken skin, the bruises, the burns. "No," he said. "I'm going to kill everyone who watched." And the hallway behind them echoed with footsteps, guards, reinforcements, too late to stop what was coming. The first body hit the floor before the others even realized what was happening. Griff moved through the hallway like something born in war and tempered in rage, carrying Mira in one arm and a sidearm in the other. The guards shouted commands, reached for weapons, but it was too late. He didn't hesitate. A blast of energy tore through the first two, the impact throwing them against the wall with a sickening crunch. He didn't stop to gloat or pose. He kept walking, one step at a time, methodical and merciless. Mira leaned against his shoulder, dazed but conscious. Blood had dried across her temple, crusted black against her skin. She was too weak to fight, but her mind was still sharp. She watched with hazy wonder as her husband became something else entirely. This wasn't the quiet man who taught their son how to hunt in the woods and told bedtime stories about constellations. This was the version of him she'd only heard about in whispered rumors and half-truths from soldiers who never quite met his eyes. Alarms started screaming across the gilt spire. Red lights pulsed through the corridors. Somewhere above them, Trenx snarled commands over the comms, demanding lockdowns, reinforcements, death squads. But Griff had already made it through the hardest part. Getting in unnoticed was the challenge. Getting out while the whole station scrambled to stop him? That was familiar territory. He ducked into a maintenance tunnel and set Mira down gently behind a stack of coolant barrels. Her breath came in ragged gasps. He checked her pulse, slow but steady. She'd lost too much blood, and her left ankle was broken. Still, she grinned through the pain. "You always this dramatic when picking me up from work?" she murmured. He gave her a look, half smile and half warning. "You're not allowed to joke while actively bleeding out." She reached up and tugged on his collar, her voice softer now. "You came." "Of course I did," he said. From deeper in the tunnel, heavy footfalls echoed toward them. Griff stood and turned, shielding her with his body. 3 armored enforcers came around the corner, fully equipped with riot gear and shock cannons. They didn't hesitate either. Neither did he. The firefight was brief but brutal. Griff ducked behind a support beam, leaned out, and fired a concussion round into the middle one's chest plate. The force lifted the man off his feet and slammed him into the ceiling. The others opened fire, but Griff moved too fast. He dropped one with a triple shot to the visor, then charged the last one, closing the gap before the guard could react. They struggled for a moment, the enforcer stronger, but Griff was faster, meaner. He twisted the man's arm until it snapped and finished it with a head, but that left the helmet cracked like glass. The tunnel went still again. He dragged the bodies into a side hatch, retrieved their access cards, and returned to Mira. "We've got about 10 minutes before they reroute the drones," he said. "Can you walk?" She tried. She couldn't. But she didn't complain. He lifted her again, more carefully this time. Her head rested against his shoulder. "They're going to throw everything they have at you now," she whispered. "Good," Griff said. "Makes them easier to find." They made their way to a service elevator, one he knew the schematics for. Before Mira had ever worked in this place, he'd studied it. Just in case. He'd read every floor plan, hacked into their blueprints, mapped out every emergency route. The Gilt Spire was a fortress. But even fortresses had trash chutes. The elevator rose through layers of polished filth. Luxury spas, gambling dens, illegal biotech clinics, it all blurred together in Myra's vision. She could feel herself slipping again, the warmth of Griff's armor lulling her toward unconsciousness. But she fought it. Not yet. Not until she knew they were clear. At level 43, the elevator dinged and stopped. The doors opened into a golden lounge, filled with plush chairs, floating candlelight, and stunned nobles who clearly hadn't expected the lift to produce a blood-soaked human cradling a half-dead woman. One of them actually sipped from his drink, squinting at Griff like he was entertainment. Griff set Mira down in a chair, walked over to the bar, and picked up a bottle of Corellian whiskey. He took a sip, nodded thoughtfully, then threw the bottle full force at the man who had been watching them. It shattered on impact. The noble screamed and crumpled to the floor. "I don't like being stared at," Griff said to the room. "Everyone else leave." Now. They left. Drinks abandoned, heels clicking, no arguments. Mira chuckled weakly. "You always had a way with people." He turned back to her, pulling a stim patch from his belt and placing it on her neck. "This will keep you awake. We're not done yet." She shivered as the chemicals hit her bloodstream, her body jolting back to a state that vaguely resembled alert. "Where are we going?" "Up," he said. "Trenx's suite. He's expecting a siege. He's about to get a visit." "Are you going to kill him?" she asked. Griff stared out the wide glass windows overlooking the void of space. His voice was colder than any vacuum. "No. I'm going to make him understand." He lifted her again, this time carrying her to a waiting hoverlift used by staff. It rose quietly, unnoticed for now. The spire's chaos worked in their favor. As they ascended, Mira leaned into him. "You never told me what happened to your old unit," she murmured. He hesitated. Then he said, "Most of them died. Some joined the other side. One of them sold out to the people running this place." Her eyes widened slightly. "You mean the consortium? They're deeper into this than I thought," he said. "Trenx is just a face. There's something worse behind him." A rot that stretches all the way to the top. Mira swallowed hard. So we're not just getting me out of here, are we? No, Griff said. We're burning the whole thing down. The lift reached the top floor with a soft chime. Griff set her down behind a statue and handed her a sidearm. Stay low. If anything comes through that door that isn't me, shoot it. Mira nodded, checking the charge. You're giving me a gun now? You used to be a better shot than me, he said with a half-smile. Don't pretend you forgot. He turned toward the corridor leading to Trenx's private chambers, each step slower, more deliberate. He wasn't rushing. He wanted the bastard to know he was coming. Inside, Trenx watched security feeds blink out one by one. His guards were failing. His defenses collapsing. He reached for his emergency comm. Get me the consortium, he snapped. The line clicked once. Then a voice responded, cool and amused. No need, Trenx. We're already watching. Let's see how well you perform under pressure. The comm cut. And just beyond the chamber door, the Juggernaut arrived. The door didn't explode. It didn't rattle or creak or offer even a second of warning. It simply fell inward, sliced clean through by a weapon that hummed like old war hymns. Griff stepped over it, boots crunching against the marble in Trenx's lavish suite, where the floors were warm, the air sweetened with artificial rose scent, and the rugs were stitched from the hair of extinct species. Trenx stood near the far end, flanked by two elite guards with plasma glaives and armor polished to mirror shine. He wore a robe that looked like molten gold, sipping from a goblet carved from meteor bone, and smiled like the devil greeting an old friend. Griff didn't stop walking. You know, Trenx began, swirling the drink with theatrical flair. I've watched the footage of you entering the spire about 50 times now. The way you move, the way you kill. It's like poetry, if poetry screamed and bled. Griff didn't respond. Trenx sighed, sipping once more, then set the goblet down carefully on a table made from petrified coral. He gestured to the guards, who tensed immediately. I assume this is about the janitor, he said. Look, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but if you brought all this fury over a service worker, it feels disproportionate. Griff stopped 3 feet away. That service worker is my wife. Trenx raised a scaled brow. Oh. That explains the intensity. And here I thought you just had a thing for moral crusades. You know, when I was younger, I always admired men like you, legends who stood for something. Heroes who killed for a cause. But causes are fleeting, aren't they? Family, though, that's interesting. Family's personal. It's messy. It makes you predictable. One of the guards lunged. Griff moved like lightning, sidestepping the swing and grabbing the attacker's arm mid-strike. He twisted once, fast and brutal, and the guard's shoulder tore with a sickening pop. Before the man could scream, Griff kicked his legs out and slammed his head into the floor. The second guard rushed forward with a bellow, but Griff ducked low and swept his legs, spinning and bringing his elbow down into the man's throat. Both bodies hit the ground in quick succession. Trenx clapped, slow and mocking. Exquisite. No wonder the consortium wanted you dead back then. Griff's eyes narrowed. They made the mistake of letting me live. The words hung heavy in the air. Trenx's smirk faltered just a bit, but he recovered quickly. You know, there was a time when you could have joined us, he said. You were already infamous. All you had to do was look the other way. Instead, you played the hero. And look where it got you, hiding in the woods with a mop-wielding wife and a kid too smart for his own good. Griff took one more step. That mop-wielding wife almost broke your systems with cleaning fluid and sarcasm. You have no idea who you hurt. Trenx snorted. I hurt lots of people. It's in the job description. Griff moved again, and suddenly Trenx had a blade at his throat, a vibro knife pulled from Griff's belt so fast it barely registered on the suite's AI defense grid. The slaver didn't blink. He just grinned wider. I wonder, he said calmly, if you understand what you're about to start. You kill me, the consortium responds. They're already watching. You'll be hunted again. Not just you, your wife, your kid, Everyone you've ever spoken to. They'll burn entire cities just to erase your name. Griff pressed the blade a little harder. Then I'll make sure my name is the last one they remember. And then, something unexpected happened. The windows of the suite flickered. Not the light. Reality itself rippled, like space was folding wrong. And a voice, smooth as silk and twice as cold, filled the room. That's enough, gentlemen. Both men froze as a shimmering figure appeared between them, a projection, humanoid in form but wrapped in dark robes, faceless and towering. It wasn't a hologram. It was something more advanced. The presence oozed authority, menace, and something else Griff hadn't felt in years, recognition. Griff Malric, the voice said. Still fighting battles long after they ended. Griff stepped back, lowering his blade slightly. Which one are you? We don't use names anymore, the figure replied. You remember me as Commander Vex. I commanded you once. Before you turned your weapons on our warships. Griff's jaw clenched. You lied to us. You made us kill civilians. They were necessary sacrifices, the figure said flatly. As is this current project. Trenx is a tool. A loud, annoying tool. But efficient. Griff glanced at the slaver. Efficient at what? Breaking humans? At maintaining control, the voice replied. The galaxy doesn't need justice, Griff. It needs order. You're enslaving people. We are saving civilizations from chaos. You saw what happened after we disbanded the Juggernauts. How many systems collapsed? How many warlords rose? You removed the sword, and lawlessness filled the vacuum. I'll take chaos over this, Griff said. The figure turned its head slightly. Then your family dies. Mira. Lex. Everyone. You'll bring their deaths upon them. Griff's knuckles whitened around the hilt of his blade. Try it. I don't have to, the figure replied. This station is rigged. If Trenx dies, the failsafe triggers. Radiation will flood the lower decks. It won't just kill Mira. It will turn the entire station into a tomb. Griff's mind raced. Every instinct screamed to gut the bastard in front of him. But the threat wasn't a bluff. These people didn't bluff. They planned, calculated, controlled. Trenx smiled again, triumphant. You lose, Juggernaut. Griff slowly holstered his blade. No. I just need a different approach. The projection turned as if curious. What do you intend? I intend to let you think you won, Griff said. Then he tapped a small device on his wrist. Far below, in the docking bay, a dormant crate blinked to life. It was Cass's last gift, packed with explosives, disguised as janitorial supplies. It had sat there, unnoticed, until Griff's signal reached it. The explosion ripped through the structural spine of the gilt spire, knocking out power, scrambling the AI, and disabling the failsafes. Trenx's smile vanished. Griff looked at him. Failsafe's gone. You're just meat now. And this time, he didn't use the blade. He used his fists. Because sometimes, revenge didn't need tech or style. It needed pain. Trenx didn't die quickly. But he died knowing what it felt like to be powerless, gasping, and broken beneath someone who had everything to lose and refused to lose any of it. When it was over, Griff walked out of the suite. Blood on his knuckles. Smoke in the air. His wife waiting at the lift, pistol in her lap, head held high. He looked at her and nodded once. We're not done yet, he said. No, Mira replied, standing with effort. Now we burn their whole damn house down. The escape wasn't silent, but it was surgical. Griff carried Mira through the halls of the collapsing spire, while the station screamed around them. Fires chewed through the luxury decks. Alarms howled like dying animals. Somewhere behind them, a reactor conduit had ruptured, and the once glorious temple of corruption was bleeding molten steel. The elite scrambled for their ships, tripping over each other in their rush to live, abandoning slaves and servants to chaos. The ones who had cheered while Mira was beaten now clawed at escape pods, fighting each other like animals. Griff didn't look back. Mira clung to his armor, her pulse steady now, thanks to the stim pack and pure stubbornness. Her voice was hoarse but strong. She was talking again, always talking, mostly to keep herself conscious, and maybe because the silence around them felt too much like death. "You realize you brought the whole place down with janitor gear and spite," she said. "That's kind of poetic." "I told you that mop was sacred," Griff replied. They reached a sealed hangar bay, secondary tier, rarely used, probably overlooked in the evacuation. The door was locked, coated with consortium encryption. Griff set Mira down, propped her against a crate, and got to work. His fingers moved fast, pulling wires from the panel, rerouting currents with a piece of broken guard armor. Sparks flew, and then the lights above the door flickered green. He slammed the override switch. The massive doors groaned open, revealing a sleek, black ship that looked like it had never been touched by dirt or war. Mira raised an eyebrow. "That's not yours." "It is now." He carried her up the ramp and into the cockpit. The interior lit up automatically, responding to his presence. Clearly top-of-the-line consortium tech, cloaking, countermeasures, jump drive already charged. They weren't going to chase him with anything faster than this. Mira looked around the cabin, groggy but impressed. "You always steal the best stuff. I like to think of it as aggressive borrowing." He laid her down gently in the medical pod and activated its stabilizer field. She groaned as the machine began stitching broken tissue, but she didn't complain. She reached out, grabbed his wrist before he turned away. "You didn't just come for me," she said. Griff froze. "You came to make a point," she continued. "You could have rescued me and slipped away. But you didn't. You stayed. You made it loud. They needed to know," he said, voice low. "They do now." He didn't answer. He sat beside her as the ship lifted off, the console purring with energy. Outside the viewport, the gilt spire cracked in half, fires blooming across its hull. Dozens of escaped ships darted away like rats fleeing a sinking monument. But none of them would forget what they saw. None of them would forget the human who walked into the lion's den and tore the whole kingdom down. Far above, in the upper orbit, consortium's satellites rotated in silence. Watching. Recording. Judging. Griff knew he hadn't destroyed the whole beast. Not yet. Trenx was ahead, not the brain. But he'd made them bleed. He'd sent a message through fire and fury that even the stars couldn't ignore. He turned on the comm unit, routed it through a dozen bouncing relays, and sent a single broadcast across the old Juggernaut frequency. "Protocol Burnhouse initiated. Confirm if active." He didn't have to wait long. The reply came from a deep frequency code base buried in the heart of a dead moon. "Confirmed." Somewhere, old soldiers stirred. Veterans who had buried their weapons, who had promised never to fight again, heard that voice and remembered who they were. Not all would return. But enough would. Griff didn't plan to start a war. The war was already coming. He was just giving it a name. Back in the pod, Mira was drifting into sleep, the meds finally overtaking her pain. Before she closed her eyes, she spoke softly, more to herself than to him. "You remember when we said we'd never go back to this life?" "I do." "We lied, didn't we?" "We tried not to," he said. She smiled faintly. "At least now the mop gets a promotion." Outside, stars streaked by as the ship entered jump. The coordinates weren't random. Griff had a destination in mind, a place where he could regroup, recover, and decide what came next. A moon with old allies and even older secrets. But it wasn't just strategy driving him. It was something deeper. Rage had brought him to the spire. But what came after was purpose. On a quiet porch, back on the frozen world where this all started, Lex stood watching the sky. He held a thermal mug in both hands, the kind his mom always used for soup, and his eyes searched the clouds for signs of re-entry. When the ship finally appeared, streaking in low and fast, he didn't run inside. He just stood still, waiting. When the ramp dropped, and he saw both of them, bloodied, battered, but standing, he finally smiled. Mira limped toward him with Griff's help. Lex rushed forward, and she dropped to one knee just in time to wrap her arms around him. It hurt. Everything hurt. But she laughed anyway. You holding the fort? Yeah, Lex said, pulling back to look at her. I didn't burn the cabin. Good. I like that cabin. Griff knelt beside them, resting his hand on both their shoulders. We've got maybe a week before someone tracks us here, he said. Less if the satellite's got a clean scan. Mira nodded. Then we use the time. Prep. Rest. Teach Lex how to booby-trap the perimeter. Lex perked up. Really? Just the basics, Griff said. You're not blowing up anything without supervision. The family went inside together. The fireplace still glowed with warm embers. The old photos were still on the mantel. Everything was as they'd left it. Mira sat by the fire while Griff checked the surveillance array. Lex disappeared into the back to grab the medical kit, but when he returned, he stopped and looked at them. You're gonna fight again, aren't you? Griff paused. Mira looked at him, then at Lex. Yeah, she said. We are. Lex nodded once. No fear. No protest. Just understanding. He walked over and handed his father the kit. Then we're going to need more bandages. Later that night, when the stars were clear and the wind had died, Mira stepped outside to the porch. Griff joined her, sipping something that might have once been whiskey. She leaned on his shoulder. You think we can actually win? I think we've already started something we can't stop. She looked up. Then let's finish it. Not for revenge. Not for war. For the ones still cleaning other people's messes. He looked at her, then kissed the side of her head. We clean our own mess, he said. Behind them, the shadows moved, and in the distance, old comms lit up with the signals of rebels, survivors, ex-soldiers, and janitors who were done staying quiet. The galaxy was changing. The Juggernaut had returned. And this time, he wasn't fighting alone.